There's so many questions people have on halacha, chinuch, relationships, mental health, marriage, hashkafa, and everything in between. Every 2 weeks, I discuss them with senior Dayanim of the Kehillas Federation. I'm Mena Reisner, and you're listening to Asking for a Friend. And welcome back to Asking for a Friend. This is episode 6 and our third session on marriage and shalom bayis. I'm sitting today with Dayan Hool. Dayan Hool, thank you very much for coming back in to discuss these very important and relevant topics.
Thank you for having me.
So our last episode on school acceptances created a lot of conversation in town. Baruch Hashem, it was very well received by both people involved in schools and equally by parents of children who send to the schools, as well as being very helpful in bringing out the painful issue of children left without a school, and indeed the town's responsibility to ensure that each child has a place. I'd like to once again thank the listeners for sending in the feedback, sending in the emails. It's highly appreciated. And if you are finding these series meaningful, please do share and give us a 5-star review. Now, back to the topic of marriage and shalom bayis. We've spent the last couple of episodes with Rabbi Zimmerman, drawing on his experience as a Rov, discussing many practical day-to-day issues that marriage can face and how to address them. But today's conversation with Dayan Hool takes a step back. It looks at the foundations of marriage from a Torah perspective, with perhaps a deeper understanding of what marriage is meant to be, alongside some tips and techniques for a happy and fulfilled marriage. It's interesting, Dayan Hool, you know, these episodes, many people tell me they've told their spouse to listen to it. I guess we'll come to that as well. Now, Dayan Hool will be drawing on experience, halachic insights, practical guidance. We're going to explore the deeper purpose of marriage, what defines success within it, and how a strong, enduring Jewish home is built in practice. Now, there may be a couple of crossover questions that were already asked in the first 2 episodes, because we had to touch on fundamentals to cover day-to-day issues, but it's always good to hear other ideas, and I'm sure Dayan Hool will bring a fresh perspective too. So if we could just start by talking about a common question that's been asked. There are many best-selling books written by non-Jewish writers that are very famous for giving advice as to how best navigate the male-female relationship and create a happy marriage. Do you think there's any value or purpose in reading these books?
Not really, for 2 reasons. Firstly, because they have a different perspective on what constitutes a happy and successful marriage. So naturally, you're not going to get the same perspective that we would want to have for what constitutes a happy marriage. And secondly, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created man, created woman, and instructed them to get married. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has advised us through the Torah how to go about that. There can't be any better advice or direction as to how to get to the intended goal of a successful marriage other than what Torah and Chazal tell us. So, Chochmah b'goyim tamin, but Torah b'goyim al tamin, say Chazal. And therefore, there may be some value in reading these books. I've read 1 or 2 of them myself, and I have to say that they do have some valuable points to make. But on other points that they bring up, they're, in my opinion, wrong and going in the wrong direction. And therefore, why go to these types of sources when we have the Torah and Chazal and the Gedolei Hadoros to tell us about how to go about creating a happy and successful marriage? Now, I'll say a couple of caveats before we go any further. Number 1, much of what I'm going to say, Mitzvah Hashem, some people might find very obvious. And if that's the case, well, good for you. But I think it's still worth revisiting these things from time to time. Some people may disagree with what I'm saying, because they're coming from different viewpoints. And some people might even find some of what I'm going to say to be offensive. And my response to that is, that's fine. I'm not telling you, instructing you what to do. If you think that things are going well for you or you have better ideas, go ahead. I'm simply giving over what I understand to be the Torah's views and Chazal's views and what I've heard from my own Rabbonim. I will add one other point, and that is that we're not going to discuss today cases of marriages where there is abuse, chas v'shalom, or where there are mental health issues. These need specialist attention. We're talking today about the vast majority of marriages and people where such issues are not present.
That is an important caveat, specifically the last one, as we did the intro at the very beginning of this series, saying that by no means these are the end-all and the final psak. This is meant to broaden one's mind, to hear how Talmid Chachamim think, and to see these issues through a Torah lens. But of course, everyone should consult their own Rav. So with that intro, Dayan Hool, you said that these books can somewhat even be damaging to a Jewish marriage because many times they are a contradiction to a Torah source. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So what would you say are the most common misunderstandings or mistakes that couples make when they go into a marriage? For example, there's many opinions about whether it is true that once married, you can't change your spouse. You have to accept him or her the way they are. It's probably a more modern way of thinking. You've got to stick with it and you've got to change yourself. So I think it's quite a hotly debated issue. But on that point and in the broader sense, what would you say are common misunderstandings that couples make?
And it's a very important point that you make. I've long been planning on writing a book on marriage and shalom bayis, which is, I don't have the time to get around to actually doing it. It was tentatively entitled Dayan Hool has been to Mars and Venus. Chapter 1 was going to start with the common misapprehension, people going into marriage with the misunderstanding that a woman marries a man under the mistaken impression that she can change him, and a man marries a woman under the mistaken impression that she will stay the same. And it's true that a lot of these books and others people will tell you that you can't change a person, you have to accept your spouse for what they are. But actually, Chazal tell us that's not true. You can't change someone's character and you can't change someone's midas. That's true. But you certainly can change someone's attitude and you can change someone's behavior as well. And as Mefurish in Chazal, there's a Yalkut Shimoni. Yalkut says, Ma'aser b'chosid echod. A story once happened with a chosid. When the Medrash tells us it's talking about a chosid, we mean a genuinely pious man who the Tanoim considers a chosid. And he was married to chasida achat. He was married to an extremely pious woman as well. They didn't have children, unfortunately. And they said to each other that Ein anu mo'ilin HaKadosh Baruch Hu klum. They were so pious that they were entirely selfless, and they said each to each other that we're not producing anything for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We need to bring children into the world. So they decided to get divorced. And they went, each one of them got remarried. So the Medrash says that the Chasida, the righteous woman, married a Rasha, an evil man, and the Chosid married a Rasha. The Chosid married a wicked woman. And within a very short space of time, the righteous woman had made the wicked man into a tzaddik, and the wicked woman had made the Chosid into a Rasha. Says the Medrash, Havesha kol mino isha. We see from here that everything comes from the woman. There's another example, famous example, when Yaakov Avinu was about to meet Esau. He crossed over the river Yabok with his 11 children, his wives and his 11 children, the Pasuk says. Rashi, bringing Chazal, says he actually had 12. Binyamin wasn't born yet, but Dinah was already born. Where was Dinah? So Chazal said Dinah was locked up in a box. Yaakov locked her in a box because he didn't want Esau to see her, because if Esau would have seen her, he might have wanted to marry her. And Rashi goes on to say, B'Shem Chazal, that Yaakov was punished because of that, and as a result of this, Dinah was kidnapped shortly afterwards. And he said he was punished because he shouldn't have locked Dinah away, because if Esau had married Dinah, maybe she would have made him into a tzaddik. Shemo tachzirenu lemutav. That's a peletik hazah. If you think about it, we're talking about Esau, who was a Rasha for over 8 decades already. He was brought up in the house of Yitzchok and Rivka. He had a brother Yaakov, he had a grandfather Avraham. None of them helped at all to make him into a tzaddik. Despite all of that, he ended up becoming a Rasha. And he was well experienced in his rishus. Dinah was a young girl, roughly bas mitzvah, possibly even younger. How possibly could she have been able to make Esau do teshuvah and become a tzaddik? Chazal say that she could have done. Something which our parents and grandparents and siblings cannot do, a wife can do. A wife has much more power in forming her husband than anybody else. Now, that's not to say that a woman is responsible for her husband's behavior. A man is a Baal Bechira, he has his own agency, he's responsible for his own choices. But it does mean that as a woman, you have the power in your hands to effect a change if you really want to. How exactly you can do that we'll discuss later once we've understood a little bit about the fundamentals of how a marriage works.
So just to understand, that is one way. You're saying that a husband doesn't have that equal power on a wife.
Absolutely. A husband will not be able, almost certainly, to change his wife, but a wife has the power to fashion and change her husband.
So you did give that caveat that it's of course not the wife's responsibility because the husband is a Baal Bechira. But is that the case? If they are so indeed powerful in that relationship and they can affect such change to even change Asov for the better, then perhaps that shows that they have some level of responsibility to better their husband's ways. Or you're saying that's not the case at all?
No, absolutely. If you want to build a foundation, a bias, a solid foundation, then yes, there is an element of the woman being responsible for her husband. Again, you can't blame the woman if the husband makes choices differently, but the woman does have the power to change it. We find famously, the Pasuk says, Chochmos Noshim Bonsot Beiso, the Pasuk in Mishlei, and Chazal say this refers to the wife of Oin ben Peres. As we know, Oin ben Peres had joined together with Korach and Dosan and Aviram, who were rebelling against the Kodesh Baruch Hu. But she realized that this was going in the wrong direction. She managed to make sure that Oin ben Peres was not involved in the Machlokas. She took him out of the Machlokas. And on that, the Pasuk says, Chochmos Noshim Bonsot Beiso, that the wisdom of a woman can build a household. So we see that there is the power in a woman's relationship with her husband to make sure that he goes on the right way.
Right. So just to better understand how we're defining a happy or successful marriage, would the Dayan say that a marriage in which there are no arguments, no tension, they both get along, would you say that would be the definition of a successful marriage?
That's a good start. It's not the ultimate goal of a happy and successful marriage when you just both get along and you don't argue with each other, but it's a good start. Rev Gans, Yisrael Gans is a Rav in Mattersdorf, he once told me that he was once speaking in France, if I'm not mistaken, at a public gathering, and he told over the famous story of his Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, by his wife's levaya, he said that the minig is that people ask for mechila from the nifta if they've ever done anything wrong to them, but I don't need to ask mechila from my wife, because we've been married for 48 years, Arbim v'shmona shana, and we never had an argument. After he finished the drasha, one of the attendees came over to him and he said to him, Ani lo mevin ma big deal. Gam ani lo hitvakachti mishti 48 sha'a. He says, I also didn't argue with my wife for 48 hours. So Afghan said to him, no. I said 48 years, shana, not 48 hours. But Afghan said to him, but 48 hours is also good if you manage not to argue with a wife for 48 hours. So that's definitely an achievement, absolutely. It's a peaceful home, but that's not the definition of a successful and happy marriage. A successful marriage is one in which each spouse gets what they're supposed to get and what they need to get out of a marriage. That's the definition of a successful and a happy marriage. Now, you can be satisfied with the situation as it is, and good for you. But in Mitzvah Hashem, if you have children, one day the children will have left home. And then there's just the two of you together. So it's worth investing now in the relationship to make it much more close rather than just getting on with each other and not arguing.
So coming on to the ideal marriage then, how would the Dayan define marriage at its fullest potential? What is the ultimate marriage one can have?
In order to understand that, you have to know a few things. First of all, you have to know and understand what is the purpose of a marriage. Then you have to know and understand what are your duties in a marriage, what are your chiyuvim in a marriage. Then you need to understand yourself a little bit, and you have to understand each other. A woman needs to understand a man and what he needs to get out of a marriage, and vice versa. A man needs to understand a woman and what she needs to get out of a marriage. And the reason why it's so important to understand the other person and their characteristics and their nature is firstly because in that way you can correctly implement your side of the marriage and you can carry out the duties that you have in a marriage. And secondly, you'll be much less frustrated if you understand where the other person is coming from, even as you might find certain situations challenging to deal with.
So you're implying that men and women have different characteristics and that each might not realize that their differences are inherent. Could you give an example?
I'll give a couple of examples. Ruchaim Friedlander writes that a woman has a natural tendency towards seder, towards neatness, particularly in the home. There's probably a good reason why the vast majority of interior designers are women rather than men. But specifically in one's own home, a woman has a feeling for neatness and for presentation of the house, which most men don't necessarily have. And Reb Chaim Friedland said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu imbued the women with this feeling because their tafkid is normally to look after the house. Now, if a man understands that, then he might find it easier to deal with certain situations. For example, the example that Reb Chaim Friedland gives, the husband is learning at home, so he takes out a sefer, he opens it up, he takes out another sefer. By the end of his session, he's got a whole pile of Sforim opened up. He goes off to Ma'ariv and he's finished for the evening, so he closes all the Sforim and leaves them on the table. So the wife says, well, can you put all the Sforim away, please? The husband said, well, what's the point? Tomorrow morning I'm going to take them all out again, same Sforim, and look at them again. So it makes much more sense just to leave them on the table. And the wife says, it's not working with it, makes much more sense, because the wife sees it as the house. As I said, it's got to be presentable. People come in, she feels that she wants to show people the house is tidy. Even if no one comes in, it's her house and she feels house proud. She also understands that it logically makes sense to leave the Sforim there. But for her, the aesthetics and the presentability of her home is more important than the extra effort that is needed to put the Sforim away and take them out again. If a husband understands that that's where the woman's coming from, less frustrated. If he doesn't appreciate that people think differently to him, then what seems to him obvious and logical is not the same, and he won't grasp that. He'll find it a little bit more difficult to deal with than if he understood that the person he's talking about, his wife, actually has a different perspective. I'll give another example. The Medrash says, why is it that a woman is more difficult to be Matthias, to appease, than a man is? And the Medrash says, and the reason for that is that a man is created from Adama. Adam is from Adama, is created from the earth. The earth, when you put a little bit of water on it, it already crumbles and you can mix it around. It's very malleable. Whereas a woman is created from a bone. HaKadosh Baruch Hu fashioned Chava from a bone from Adam. A bone is hard. You can add water to it all day. It won't become soft and it won't weaken. That's what the Medrash says. What does that mean in practical terms? In practical terms, it means that if you're having a disagreement with your wife, and all of a sudden she says, yeah, and the last time you also said this, or the last time you didn't say that, or the last time you did this or didn't do that, or whatever it is. And you're thinking to yourself, what do you mean the last time? That was about 15 years ago. I'd completely forgotten about that. But she hasn't forgotten about that. The reason why she hasn't forgotten about that is because it's a Medrash. The Medrash says that a woman is more difficult to be Matthias than a man. If you can appreciate that this is her nature, you are better equipped to understand where she's coming from. But there is this idea. It's very interesting. When in Slichos, when we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to have Rachmanos and Klal Yisrael, we say, Kerachem ov halbonim, Hashem should be Merachem on us just like a father has Rachmanos on his son. A mother normally has Rachmanos on her child more than the father. We ask who has more Rachmanos on the child, it's normally the mother than the father. We don't say Kerachem eim halbonim, we say Kerachem ov halbonim. So Ramotel Juk, the Maggid of Yerushalayim, used to say, it's true that a mother has more Rachmanos on a child than a father. But when you've done something wrong, if you do something wrong to your mother, you say something wrong to your mother, she'll never forget it. You say something wrong to your father, by tomorrow he's forgotten it, as long as you've apologized. When we come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're asking for slicha for what we've done wrong. So we say, Kerachem ov halbonim, not Kerachem eim halbonim. We'll talk a little about the unique nature and characteristics of a man a little bit later. So you can learn these things through experience as well. There's no question about it. If you're well informed in advance, you understand where the other person is coming from, you find it much more easy to appreciate the other person, understand where they're coming from, and be able to respond accordingly.
Right. So you're defining we're getting closer to the inherent differences between man and woman. Would you say that Shalom Bayis is about emotional harmony, about navigating this maze of differences? Would you say it's more about behavior, responsibility? Is there something deeper going on as an ongoing avoda? What is the ultimate goal of Jewish marriage? I understand that we've discussed how to ensure that there's peace in the house by understanding each other's differences and working accordingly. What is the goal of marriage?
Marriage is an ongoing avoda. It does involve behavior and responsibility, and there is a goal. And one of the indications that you've reached that goal is when there's emotional harmony in the home. But what is the purpose of marriage? It's a posuk in Bereshis. Al ken yazev ishes ovives imoy. So a man should leave his parents, v'dovak be'ishto, cleave to his wife, v'hoyu lebosar echod, and they become as one flesh. Explains the Netziv. A man gets married to a wife, he has to love her so much that they become like one person. They become like an Odom Echod. They become one unit to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And for two people to become one unit, that intrinsically involves love, to get to the situation where just as a person protects and feels for every part of his own body, so he will feel for his wife, and vice versa, so the wife will feel for him. Until you get to the level, the famous story of Rabbi Levine, who went to the doctor with his wife, and he said to the doctor, "My wife's foot hurts us." In the words of the Chazon Ish, the relationship between a man and a wife should be like the relationship between a right hand and a left hand. Not external, but atzmi'i, which is intrinsic, two parts of one body. A husband and wife, the goal is to become a single body with a joint mission in life, joint goals, and joint achievements. And there's no question that a woman feels the connection that they are one, that the husband and wife are one unit, more readily than a man notices or feels it. I'll give you a couple of examples. A woman's embarrassed if her husband walks around dressed like a shloch. He's wearing the same old shabby jacket that he's been wearing for years. Now, for the husband, it's comfortable. It's got the deep pockets to carry all his sforim and his gadgets and whatnots, and he doesn't see the problem. It looks perfectly okay to him. But the wife bothers her. What does it bother her? He's out of the house. She's not looking at him. The answer is that the wife feels that the husband is part of her, and therefore it disturbs her because he is representing both of them. Once you're married, you don't represent yourself anymore. You represent you and your wife. I'll give you another example. A man comes home after a long day. He walks into his house, and before he's had a chance to say hello, his wife said to him, "Oh, there you are. What a day I've had. You have no idea what happened. First of all, someone was mean to me at work. And on the way home, I scratched the car. I came home, the kids have driven me absolutely mad, and I tried baking a cake. The whole thing flopped. Where have you been all day? I've phoned you the whole day. You haven't answered the phone once." Her husband said, "Yeah, because I was recharging my phone. I forgot I left it at home." "This is the day you have to leave the phone at home." Just then, the phone at home rings, and the wife looks at the phone and picks it up. The husband takes the diversion and hoofs it off to the lounge. And here's his wife talking to a friend. She says, "Hello, Shiffy. How are you? Oh, what a day I had today. Absolutely terrible. I'm laughing at it now, but it really wasn't funny. I'm telling you during the..." And the husband's thinking, why can't I get the same treatment as Shiffy? Why is she pouring it all over me in frustration? And when he speaks to a friend a minute later, it's all funny. And the answer is because her friend is a friend, but it's external. Her husband is her. Yeah. She is, if you like, Barry Levine's wife saying, "I want you to feel the pain in my foot as well, because you are part of me and I'm part of you." And therefore she feels to the husband as if he's part of her. That closeness brings about this effect. Now, do you feel much better now as a husband? Perhaps not. Okay, I feel your pain, but at least now you understand where it's coming from. It's coming from a good place. Feel privileged at least. Then work out how you're going to deal with it.
So you're saying that if a husband or wife doesn't feel that the first person they would turn to and tell them everything that's going on in their minds, that person would not be their spouse. You're saying that would be something inherently missing in their marriage?
Yes, I think so. B'hoyu lebosar echod means they're one and the same person.
This episode is sponsored Le'il Nishmas David and Leah Last, David ben Chaim Moshe and Leah bas Moshe Yehuda. David's yahrzeit is on Purim, and it's been dedicated by their children Gina and Cookie Wiesenfeld and Henry and Sarah Last. The theme that runs through this episode of a husband loving his wife and the wife giving the husband all the respect he deserves is something which was very much apparent in this special couple for all who knew them. On a personal note, just speaking to my mother earlier, she said her family, the Goldbergs and the Lasts, go back many decades, and therefore it was extra meaningful that this episode is dedicated in their memory. So how would you describe the different duties? You mentioned before that you have to understand your roles in the marriage. What are these duties? And does each party to a marriage also have to get something out of the marriage, or is it more about responsibilities?
Okay, so we're going to need to understand a little bit more deeply the idea behind the marriage and, as you say, the duties that the person has. In Torah thought, there's always the emphasis on the obligations rather than on the rights. For example, secular law will say a worker has the right to be paid on time. The Torah says an employer has a duty to pay his employee on time. The emphasis is on the chiyuv, on the obligation, rather than on the schus, on the right. So the correct way and the best way and the only way to get to the ideal marriage is when each party carries out its obligations in the marriage. Now, what are the obligations in the marriage? Well, first of all, everybody has a tafkid in life. Everyone has a purpose for what we're here on this earth. And we have tzrochim, we have needs, we have requirements that we need in order to be able to carry out our tafkid. Now, a man, his primary tafkid obviously is to fill all his obligations as a yid, and also to fill his obligations as a husband, as a father, and as a son. What are his needs? Well, one of the fundamental needs in order to carry out his mission in life is a wife. He needs a wife for two reasons. First of all, functional reasons. He needs a wife for his physical needs and for his technical needs. So we call it running the household, serving food, having children, raising children. There's also a deeper need than a man needs a wife. And that is, a man needs a woman who really wants him. He needs a woman who appreciates him, who respects him, who desires him. And when he has that, he will feel a need to protect and provide for her to make her happy. Because a husband, in Jewish thought, a man is a mashpia, a woman is a makabel. And when he feels he has a woman who really wants and appreciates him and respects him, then he will feel the need to provide and to protect her and to make her happy, because deep down he needs to give to his wife. A woman's tafkid is to fulfill her obligations as Yid, as a wife, as a mother, and as a daughter. And she needs a husband for that. Again, for the functional. But for her, it's slightly different. She needs a man to be at her side, to protect her, to provide for her, and to support her. She also needs a husband who will appreciate her, but she needs someone that she can appreciate as well. She needs a husband she can respect and look up to. And she needs someone who's considerate of her physical, her technical, and her emotional needs. And that means that she needs to feel that her husband is confirming to her that he loves her, that she finds favor in his eyes, and she's foremost in his mind. Her nature is to seek that approval from her husband. The Torah says, "Ve'elishech teshukosech." The Kodesh Baruch Hu said to Chava, your desire, there's not really a good English word for teshuka, but your craving, your passion should be for your husband. Now, the word teshuka appears another time in Tanakh, in Shir Hashirim. It says, Doidi liv olai teshukasei. Klal Yisrael say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is for me, and his teshuka, kavayochel, the teshuka of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is on me, is on Klal Yisrael. And the Medrash compares the two, Ve'elishech teshukasei and Ve'olai teshukasei. The Netziv explains that the teshuka of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kavayochel, the Klal Yisrael, is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu greatly desires that Klal Yisrael will love the Rebbeinu Shalom, will have the Rebbeinu Shalom on their mind the whole time, and will follow the Rebbeinu Shalom and do everything that the Rebbeinu Shalom wants. In the same way, Ve'elishech teshukasech means that a woman has in her nature the desire that her husband loves her and shows his love for her, that he's thinking about her all the time, that she's foremost in his mind, that she finds favor in his eyes, and that will give her the emotional satisfaction in a marriage. The Lashon of the Chazon Ish, when the Chazon Ish speaks prose, it's always beautiful. Teva shelah, says the Chazon Ish, lehizaneg al cheno be'einov ve'elov eineho nesuos. The nature of a woman is that she finds satisfaction and pleasure in finding favor in the eyes of her husband. The Stipler also says, Ika tikvas ha'isha ba'olam hi, the main hope for a woman in this world is that she'll have a husband who genuinely loves her and shows her that love. And says the disciple, if she doesn't feel that, it's korov lepikuach nefesh, the logic of the disciple. So if we narrow it down, a husband needs to be respected. He needs to be respected, and he wants intrinsically to give to his wife. He wants to make his wife happy. A woman needs to respect her husband and to look up to him. She needs to feel that he's someone that she can look up to, and she needs to be loved and to receive, because her nature is to receive. So for an ideal marriage, the husband needs to feel respected and the wife needs to feel loved.
So does that mean that if a husband is very well respected in his community, in his country, he's very well known, and yet when he comes home, he doesn't feel like his wife respects him, will that be something inherently missing? Seeing that it's close to Purim, could we draw a parallel for Haman coming out and everyone bowing down to him, but Mordechai didn't? It shouldn't be a direct parallel to Haman, but is that a husband's nature, that he absolutely needs his wife to look up to him and he can't get his fulfillment without it?
Absolutely. Very much so. Every person, whatever they do during the day, whether they're in kollel, in yeshiva, or they're working, you're never in charge. You're never the top person. There's always your line manager above you, whatever it is. But when you come home, an Englishman's home is his castle, that's the old saying, but it's for everybody. The husband feels the need to be in charge of the house and to be respected and looked up and appreciated for it. It's deep set in the psyche of a man that at home he is the king and he needs to feel that. And if he doesn't feel that, there'll be something missing and the household will not be on the right track.
It's fascinating. But seeing that they both have different ways, man and woman have different ways to get that fulfillment, would you say it's possible to have a marriage in which one party has a happy marriage, one party is extremely happy with their life, with their marriage, and the other doesn't?
No, that can't happen. For an ideal happy marriage, it can only work if both parties are there. It can work as an okay marriage, and it happens all the time. The one spouse is okay, but the other one isn't. But for one side to be fulfilled and happy and satisfied in a marriage, that can only happen if both are on the same page. If you have the case where one spouse is okay but the other one isn't, it's almost always the case where the man is happy or at least satisfied and the woman is not. And the reason for that is that if there is not this deeper connection, then a man in a marriage can get his basic needs and he can live happily with that, or at least okay with that. If you think of it in percentage terms, for a man, shall we say 80 or 90% of the marriage is his functional needs, the running of the house. As long as he's got that, he's okay. Now, there is this deeper need to be respected, but in the worst case scenario, he can handle without that. He can chug along nicely year after year without that. Prefer it, obviously, but he can manage without it. But for a woman, her basic needs include the fact that she needs to be loved and needs to feel that she's loved. That goes to the core of what is marriage for her. And therefore, if you're in a situation where they're getting along with each other, but there's not this deeper connection, then she will not be happy and she will not be satisfied with the marriage. And that usually leads to one of two things. Either she'll retreat into herself and then continue to be unhappy, or she'll go to the other extreme, become confrontational, start criticizing, start shouting, and she'll make things worse for herself, because husbands don't like being shouted at and told off, and will find that she's making herself to blame as well for her own unhappiness. So in order for there to be a happy marriage, it's more important that the woman understands herself what she needs to get out of a marriage, and to try and make sure that she does get that out of the marriage. You can just about manage without it, but you can have much more, and you deserve much more than that.
Okay, so you're saying that the ratio of needs by what? So let's focus on the woman a second. It's a very high percentage of her need in the marriage to feel loved by her husband. How then does a husband demonstrate that he loves his wife? What does that look like?
So Avoda, love, is really an emotion. How do you get to love in a marriage? When Yitzchak Avinu, it says that he married Rivka, Vayehoveho, and he loved her. He got married and then he fell in love. That's the way it works in real life. So how do you get to there? There's a Gemara in Yevamos. The Gemara in Yevamos stuff, something based. The Gemara says, Oihev es ishto kegufa, someone who loves his wife like himself. V'hamachabdo yosem migufay, someone who honors her and respects her more than himself. And then it adds two other things, someone who mechanech his children properly and he marries them off as soon as they become a marriageable age. Or lova kosavim, about him, the Pasuk says in Eov v'yodato ki sholem o halecho u'filkadotecho navecho v'lesechto. You will know that you have shalom in your tent, and you'll visit your house, and there will be no averis. V'yodato ki sholem alecho means you will have shalom bayis. That's what the Pasuk says. It says the Gemara, how will you have shalom bayis? You have to love your wife like yourself, and you mechabet her, you respect her more than yourself. So Chaim Shmulevitz says one line in one of his Sichos Musa, and he says, if we think carefully, he says, we look into it, what is the main way to get to Ahav and Shalom? What is the main factor which is involved, which brings Ahav and Shalom between two people? He says, Nira kihu kavod chaveira. It's got to be the respect that you show for the other person. That's what Chaim Shmulevitz said, and I think it's a Gemara as well. The Gemara in Brachos says that Rabbi Eliezer the Tana was ill, and he was on his deathbed. His Talmidim came in and asked him to teach us one or two points that we should be zoicha, that we should understand, that we should be able to be zoicha to Olam Haba. So he said two things. The first thing he said was, Hizoharu b'chvod chavereichem. Be careful with showing respect to your friends. Now, that's the Gemara in Brachos. The Bryce in Maseches Kala brings the same story, and it adds, why did he say that? Where did he get that from? Because the Torah says, V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. You have to love your fellow man like yourself. What is the Gemara in Bryce and Maseches Kala telling us? It's telling us that Rabbi Eliezer says you've got to get to V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to love your fellow man like yourself. The way to do that is Hizoharu b'chvod chavereichem. Make sure you respect, look up to, and demonstrate your respect for your fellow man. And that's the way you get to V'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha. That's the way you get to Ahava. As we mentioned, the Gemara says, Ha'oyev is ishto kegufa, someone who loves his wife like himself, and is mechabdo yosem megufa, he honors and respects her more than himself. About him it says, V'yodato ki shalom alecho. The Rambam brings this down as a halacha. The Rambam in Hilchos Ishus Perek 12 says, Echein tzivu chachomim, chachomim commanded, sheyehe odom mechabed et ishto yosem megufa, he should honor his wife more than himself, v'oyavo kegufa, and he should love her like himself. You see what the Rambam's done there? He swapped the order around. The Gemara says, Ha'oyev is ishto kegufay, v'amachabdo yosem megufay. The Rambam says, Tziva chachomim she'i odom machabed is ishto yosem megufay, v'oyev kegufay. I think that's why the Rambam has switched it around. The Gemara is talking about someone who's already there. He is oyev is ishto kegufay, and is machabdo yosem megufay. He is achieved shalom bayis. The Rambam is telling you how you get there. How you get there is mechabdo yosem megufa. You're going to honor her more than yourself, respect her more than yourself, and then you will come to oyev kegufa. You'll love her as much as yourself. She'll become one body. Your wife's foot will hurt you. You become l'hoyu l'bosa echad, which is the tachlis for the marriage. And by the way, it's in your ksuba as well, so you're contractually obliged to it. You write in your ksuba, "Ana eflach v'oikir." What does v'oikir mean? I will respect and honor. So you've signed up for that whether you like it or not, apart from the fact that it's a Gemara and it's a Rambam and it's a halacha, but that's what you have to do.
Here's a very interesting subtlety on the Rambam, and it would make sense that the Rambam is trying to teach us, is trying to tell us how to get to that perfect place that the Gemara explains. But you're saying that the way to get to the emotion of love is by respecting, right? You respect your spouse, that will lead to love. But how does that work in practice? In what way does a husband show respect to his wife that will lead him to love?
The way to do this is by recognizing her needs and providing for them and showing that he cares and he appreciates her. And there's a whole number of different ways of doing it. First of all, let's look at the Rishonim, what the Rishonim say on the Gemara. Mechabda yosem megufa, so Rashi in Sanhedrin says, that means to provide her with jewelry. I'm afraid so. You're going to buy her jewelry. The Yad Ramah was also a Rishon, says provide her with nice clothes. You've got to let her buy nice clothes. As a Gemara in Hool, Pei Dayan on the base, the Gemara says when it comes to your wife, you have to provide her, talking specifically, it would appear about clothes, yosem mima sheyeshlo, more than a person has. The husband's going to provide with his wife more than he has. Now, what does that mean? The Rambam Hilchos Deos says it doesn't mean more than he can afford. You've got to stick within your budget. It means more than he has, more than he buys for himself, he's going to spend on his wife, but stick within the budget. But the more money and wealth that the husband has, says the Rambam, the more he's mechuyev to provide his wife as well. But Rashi implies, and actually the Mashal says explicitly, that when the Gemara in Hool says he's got to provide his wife with more than he has, it actually means more than he can afford. He should go beyond what he can afford to provide his wife with good, nice clothes that she likes.
He should go into debt to do that?
That's the mashma. The Rosh of the mashma is he should borrow money if necessary. How does that work? What do we do with the fact that the Rambam says you've got to stick within your means? So I think the answer to that, as far as Rashi and Mashal is concerned, is a Gemara Bamatzia, Daf Nun Tes. The Chanina says, "La'olam yizoy adam michvod ishto." You should always be very careful with the honor and respect of your wife. She'ein brocha metzuya la'adam ela b'shvil ishto. There's no brocha that you'll have in a house other than through the wife. So he says, be careful with the honor and respect to your wife because that brings brocha. And the Gemara goes on to say, Rava said to Bnei Mechuzah, Rava lived in a place called Mechuzah, and he told the people, he lectured them there, and he says, he says, honor your wives in order that you should become wealthy. So Rava, you want a scholar for parnosa, you want a scholar for wealth, honor your wife. So if the Gemara says the way to be mechaved your wife, Yosem Migufa, is to provide for Yosem Masha Yeshlo, then that means to say you don't have to worry about running out of money or spending beyond your means because you're guaranteed to become wealthy if you honor your wife. Now, I suspect that if she spends the money faster than he can earn it, you might not have that scholar. So I call everything within reason. But there are other aspects of how a husband's supposed to be mechabda yosem megufah. The Torah says Avram pitched his tent, and the way it's written, oholoi, with a hey at the end, can be read to imply he pitched her tent. So Rashi says Shem Chazal that Avram pitched Sorah's tent before he pitched his own tent. Says the Maharal, why? Because the Gemara says you've got to be mechabda yosem megufah. She comes first. And therefore, if there's only one bed, then the wife gets the bed and not the husband, because you've got to mechabda yosem megufah. When I first got married and we moved into our dira in Yerushalayim, I always stood at my wife's side. We had to because we only had one chair. That's what it means. Mechabda yosem megufah, there's only one, you've got to give it to her. All of that is with regard to providing for her needs. But mechabda yosem megufah means more than that as well. It means you've got to praise everything that she does. Be grateful for what she does and let her know that you're grateful for it. So when she makes food, comment on it. Say the food is good. Don't ignore it. Don't assume. Don't just assume that you deserve it, you're supposed to get it. Thank her for it, appreciate it, and show your appreciation and say that it's good. Once in a while, make it a little bit more personal. Don't just say the food is good. Say that she is an excellent cook, rather than just describe the results. Ask her for advice in Mili Da'alma, the Gemara says. When it comes to general things in the house, ask your wife's advice. Listen to what she has to say. When your wife is talking to you, don't keep glancing down at your sefer when she's talking, but rather listen to what she's saying, show that you're paying attention, take an interest in it. Join her in your life as well. The Chazon Ish says that when you leave home, tell your wife where you're going. And when you come back, tell her where you've been and report on what had happened. Show her that you are part of her life and she's part of your life. And as we said before, a woman needs to be confident that her husband loves her and is thinking of her. The Gemara in Yevamos Daf Samach Gimel said Rav Chia had a wife who was very difficult, caused him a lot of trouble. But nonetheless, when he was out and he found something, he used to wrap it up in his handkerchief and bring it home for her. A small gift, a shmonz, a little thing. And the reason why he did that is because, first of all, as we said, a husband is a giver, and to make the connection between the husband and the wife, a husband needs to feel that he can give to his wife, and the wife needs to feel that she can receive from her husband, but also that it shows that he was thinking of her. When he was out, he thought to buy her something. It doesn't have to be something very expensive or something. It's the thought that counts. But what is the thought? The thought is that I was thinking of you when I was out. I decided to buy you something little. So, as we said before, as the Chazon Ish says, the teva of a woman is a wife feels that her husband is interested in her and loves her and shows his love for her. Let me give you another example. You have husband and wife going to a chasna. So the wife says to the husband, which dress shall I wear, the blue dress or the green dress? So the husband's thinking to himself, I didn't even know she had a green dress. What is the difference? So he says, whatever you want, whatever you think. Well, that's the wrong answer, because she doesn't want to know whatever she thinks. She's asking you. So she's asking you, first of all, because she wants you to show a little bit of leadership, but also because she wants to know what you think about her. She wants you to be taking interest in her. And if you just say, well, I couldn't care what you're wearing, then you've completely missed it. You've messed up. She needs to feel that you are interested in what she looks like. So how do you answer when you taka don't know? So here I'll give you a tip, which I heard from Dayan Finkel. If there are any women listening to this, please block your ears now, because this is men talk. Don't worry, I'll tell you when you can unblock your ears. So this is what you could do for those who haven't yet learnt how to genuinely show appreciation for your wife. You choose one and you stick with it come what may. So you say, I think the blue dress is very good. It looks really good on you. And then she'll say, but what about the green? You say, no, the green's good, but I think the blue. I prefer the blue. I have a feeling I just like to see her in the blue dress. And she said, not the green? No, the blue, absolutely. And you stick with it. Don't say, well, I said blue, and you're now saying, what about the green? So what are you asking me for? No, again, you messed up. Show that you're interested. And then, if she actually wears the blue dress, you say, you see, you look stunning in it. If she wears the green dress in the end, you say, you know what, you were right. You actually look better in the green dress. It's a good choice. That's what you do.
You shouldn't go all the way and say, I told you not to do
No, absolutely not. You're messing up again. Because it's true that when she goes to the wedding, she wants all her friends to say, wow, you look amazing. But more important to her than all of that is that her husband should take an interest in her and not just say, it doesn't make a difference to me, I didn't even notice and I couldn't care. Okay, if any ladies, you can unblock your ears now. But this is the point. This is a husband has to demonstrate. Now, if the wife turns around and says to you, I know why you're saying that, that's because you heard it on the podcast, then your response is, well, first of all, you're supposed to be blocking your ears, so you shouldn't have heard that. But second of all, you're quite right. Yes, I heard it on the podcast, and I'm thinking more about how I can build our marriage. It's perfect as it is, but there's no harm in adding building blocks to this marriage. And I want you to be happy, and I want you to be appreciated. I want to show my appreciation for you and how I want to demonstrate my love for you. Yes, absolutely right. Nothing wrong with that at all.
And if anything, Dayan will help me open my eyes.
Yeah, no, you don't have to give me the credit. Just do it. That's the main thing.
Dayan, you've said a lot of different things there. There was quite a lot to unpack there. Going back to the gifts for a second, there seemed to be quite a lot of sources that you brought before about how important it is to buy her gifts, to buy her a dress. The extreme of even one of the Rishonim you brought down saying that you should buy something you couldn't afford seems to be a very strong emphasis. I don't know how much this is taught in our circles. I think everyone knows that you have to buy one should buy a gift possibly for Yom Tov, but the stresses on making sure that you buy jewellery, that you buy a dress, even to the extreme of stretching yourself to something one can't afford, I think might surprise quite a lot of the listeners.
Yes, you're quite right. The Gemara says that Simchas Yom Tov is the mitzvah for his husband to buy his wife new clothes for Yom Tov. That applies to the Shalosh Regalim. But as you're quite right, as we see from the Gemara in Hool and the Gemara in Yevamos and the Rambam, it's all year round. Now, within reason, even if we say you can go a bit over budget, don't splash out too much when you'll never be able to get it back, even in realistic terms, even if you get the bracha. But yes, a husband has a duty to make sure it's mechabdo yosem megufo. He wouldn't necessarily buy it from himself. He's happy with the clothes that he's got, but he's got to splash out a bit more on his wife. That's called mechabdo yosem megufo, and that will demonstrate to his wife that she's important in his eyes, and that will bring ahava, as we said before, that will bring ahava for him to her, and she will feel that ahava, and she will feel fulfilled in the marriage.
And what about discussing Mile Dalma? So let's say if a husband would come home and he's got a large business and people working for him and there's lots of financial stuff going on in his brain and he doesn't feel like he's in the mood of sharing it all with his wife. And to be honest, he probably thinks there isn't much she can add because she doesn't have that experience. Or let's say the classic man the cliche, right, wants to just come home and sit down on the couch. Should husbands make an active effort, even if they don't necessarily, or at the beginning, think that their wife can add, and we'll get to the other way around soon, but should husbands always be conscious to share, even if they assume that their wife wouldn't have much to add to the conversation in that certain regard?
Yes, I think so. It doesn't have to be the minute you walk into the house. But the woman does have to feel that the husband involves her in his life. She needs to know what's going on. The Gemara famously talks about where Elazar ben Azariah, a young man, was appointed as Nasi when Rabbi Gamliel was deposed. And they appointed Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as the Nasi. But before anything he said, I'm going to go home and ask my wife first. He wouldn't take a decision like that without checking with his wife. So he went home and he asked her for advice and only then made the decision. Doesn't always necessarily mean that everything the wife says you have to do. That doesn't mean that she makes the decisions for you. But involve her in it, in your life. That's part of Hool b'Torah. She feels that you are part of her and she is part of you. And she knows what's going on in her life. She doesn't have to know all the details of your business and all the details of what's going on in the office. Certainly no Lashon Hara. But she needs to know where you're holding in life, what you're doing, what are your aspirations, how things are going for you, if they're going well, if they're not going well, and so on and so forth. Involve her in your life, absolutely.
So you've spoken a lot about the husband's obligations to the wife, and I'm sure there's many women listening who are making sure their husbands are listening to all the above. How about the opposite? How about the wife's obligations to her husband?
Here again there's a Rambam. The Rambam says, V'chein tzivu chachomim alo isha. Chachomim commanded the wife as well. Shetiyeh mechabedes es ba'ala b'yoseh midai. Very interesting notion. She's got to honor and respect her husband more than enough. Yoseh midai, more than enough. And the Rambam goes on with several other things to do as well, which we won't go into today. But that's how the Rambam starts off. The primary obligation of a woman, of a wife, is to respect and look up to her husband. And the reason for this is, well, it's a number of reasons. Number one, because as we said before, that's the way you get to Avo. Avo is the love which creates the Hool b'Torah Echad, and the way you get there is through being mechabed the other person. But also because, as we said before, a husband needs to be respected. And a woman in marriage needs to provide for her husband what he needs. And as much as he needs to provide for her to feel loved, she needs to provide for him to feel respected. And a little bit more than that. For a happy marriage, she herself has a need to respect her husband. And she wants to respect her husband. The Elishech Teshukosech is built into her teva. And if a woman can't respect her husband, she can't look up to him, she can't appreciate him, then she won't be able to form a single unit with him as a bota echod, as a single person. When a woman needs to look up to her husband, it's because that's her obligation, but it's also because it's what she needs in a marriage. I'll tell you something very interesting. Everybody knows the halacha that if a person is roitzeach b'shogeg, someone killed someone by accident, he's got to run away to the Ir Miklot, and he stays there until the Kohen Gadol dies. So everybody knows a famous Mishnah in Makkas. The Mishnah says that the mothers of the Kohenim Gedolim used to give food and clothes to the Rotzchim who were in the Ir Miklot because they were concerned that the Rotzchim would daven that the Kohen Gadol should die in order they should be set free from the Ir Miklot. So he's given gifts in order that they shouldn't feel too uncomfortable in the Ir Miklot, should be a little bit comfortable, and then hopefully they won't daven that the Kohen Gadol should die. The mothers of the Kohen Gadol used to do that. What about the wives of the Kohen Gadol? Why didn't they do anything? Were they not concerned? So I'll tell you what the difference is between a wife and a mother. A wife loves her husband and a mother loves her son as well. But there's a different type of love. I'll give you an example. Husband wakes up one morning, he's got a terrible headache, terrible flu, he feels absolutely awful. He says, I can't go out today, I'm staying at home. So the wife will turn around to him and say, look, I feel really bad for you, I'm really sympathetic, but I can't have you lying in bed all day or pottering around in your dressing gown feeling sorry for yourself. Do me a favour, take 2 paracetamol, have a hot cup of tea, and in half an hour go off to Kollel or off to the office or whatever it is you do all day and come back this evening and hopefully you'll feel a lot better. Yeah. If his mother hears about it though, she's on the phone straight away. I heard my son's not well. What's up with him? You've got to make sure he's got plenty of rest. He's probably working too hard, too much stress. He's probably looking after the kids much too much. Maybe you should take some of that pressure off his hands and maybe you should look after the kids a little bit more. And the wife is thinking, him looking after the kids, they can't even remember their names. What's she talking about? Wisely, she doesn't say anything. He said, but why is the difference? Why is the mother's love like that and the wife's love are not quite the same? And I think possibly the answer is because, as I said, a wife needs to look up to her husband. She needs to respect him. That's part of the marriage. When the husband's down, when he's weak, when he's vulnerable, that's challenging for a wife because she's now not in the natural position where he's the strong man that she's looking up for, running the house for leadership, but he's weak and he's vulnerable. And that's challenging, and that's a little bit difficult. It doesn't work quite the same.
The mother still sees that little boy that she looks after.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, not everybody is like that. Some women have a very maternal instinct even when it comes to the husband. But, again, if you can recognise the teva here, if you want rachmanis, don't necessarily look to your wife for it. That's not to say that the wife shouldn't have rachmanis. You've got to overcome this. Give him a bit of rachmanis. If the fella's not feeling well, the poor guy. But at the same time, I think that's perhaps the reason behind this. But again, the principle is, as we said before, a woman needs to respect her husband. First of all, because she will feel in a marriage much more satisfied and fulfilled when she can respect her husband and look up to him. But also because, as the Rambam says, that is a duty to provide for a husband, because that's what a husband needs in a marriage. A husband needs to feel that he is respected and he's appreciated.
So that's a fascinating insight, the differences between the mother and the wife's way of showing love. But going back to what you said earlier about the husband should come home and share a lot about his day, would you suggest that there's a caveat that a husband shouldn't ask for sympathy, or if a husband needs a listening ear because he's going through a tough time, would you say that one shouldn't unload or burden the wife with that because she might lose some respect or feel a bit vulnerable that the leader isn't acting like a leader?
I think that, on the contrary, the wife would appreciate that the husband is joining her in his life and respecting her input, her advice and her decision. When a husband asks for advice, then absolutely the woman should give it. When the husband doesn't ask for advice, that's when she shouldn't. We'll perhaps talk about it a little bit later. But certainly, if he's going through a tough time, part of the job of a wife is to support her husband through that as much as he has to support her through the tough times. A problem shared is a problem halved, but also because that is what one unit is. That's Avoda B'Sar Echad. And actually, challenges in life, and there will be challenges, everybody has challenges in life, create a tremendous closeness. If a husband and wife work together to overcome a challenge, whether it's a health issue or whether it's a panos issue, whatever it is, when they work together and feel that they're B'Sar Echad, and when they get through that challenge, the bond will be even stronger. The challenge itself and the working together to overcome the challenge creates a very, very strong bond. Two people who are not married but have been through a very difficult experience together will feel a certain connection to each other. And in a marriage, if they work together through difficulties and challenges, that will increase the B'Sar Echad, increase the ahava and the respect each one has for each other, and create a much stronger bond.
So the spouses can lean on each other for support. It's
Absolutely.
not that the wife is...
Of course.
Right.
Of course.
So going back to what you just said before, that a wife has a need to respect her husband, but also that she has an obligation to do so. Obligation is a strong word. How does she carry out this obligation to respect her husband?
The main point is that, as we said before, the husband is the leader of the house. I was in Eretz Yisrael a few weeks ago, and I visited a family member who is an outstanding Talmud Chacham. His wife is a hugely accomplished Shalom Bayis counselor. I told her that I'm going to be doing this podcast on Shalom Bayis and asked her if she got any points that she thinks worth mentioning, and one or two of the things we've said till now, she said. But she also emphasized this point about a woman needing to look up to her husband as the head of the household for leadership. In her words, she says, if you want to be a feminist, you can do that outside the house, but leave your feminism outside the house by the front door when you come in, because it's not going to work if you try to impose your feminism on your household and on your husband. Chazal say, it's a Gemara in Brochus, that a man is moitzi his wife with brochus, bechus amosen, whatever it is, kiddush. The Gemara says a woman, under certain circumstances, if they both have an equal chiyuv, whether it's the rights or rabbanon, can be moitzi a husband. Isha mavareches lebalo. But the Gemara says, Avol omru chachomim tova me'era la'odem she'ishto avonu mavarchenai. Chazal said a woman can be moitzi a husband, but Chazal said a curse will come on a man whose wife and kids are moitzi him. That's a very strong notion. Some of the Rishonim explain, why should he be cursed? They say because, why is he getting his wife to be moitzi him? Presumably because he doesn't know how to read. He's never taught himself how to read, and therefore he deserves to be cursed. But I think maybe there's another idea behind this as well. It's not that the Gemara is saying we'll put a curse on him. The Gemara is saying this will not end well. A man who asks his wife to be moitzi him, that's not how it should be. In the household, the husband is moitzi his wife because the husband is the head of the household. And similarly, when a woman, for example, makes more money than a husband, there's an imbalance there because normally it's always been, and that's how the world was created and how the Rebbeinu Shalom put it in the world. When a man provides for his wife and needs to provide for his wife, and that way he feels that he's head of the household, he feels respected, he feels that he's fulfilled in providing for his wife and for his family. When the wife makes more money than the husband, especially if the husband not making any money at all, there is a certain imbalance there because it's more difficult for the husband to feel that he's the head of the household and more difficult for the wife to feel that as well. And in a kernel family, for example, where nowadays many women go out to work specifically in order to provide for the household, and the husband's sitting and learning, it's even more important that they both give him the impression that the husband is nonetheless the head of the household, even though he's not the one bringing the parnasa. So if a wife doesn't appreciate her husband's Torah learning, and she's going out to work, it's asking for trouble. Now, in a from home, there's always a balance because, again, a husband will make kiddush always. The husband always sits at the top of the table and the woman sits at the side of the table, even if there's no other guests there. They don't sit necessarily opposite each other. And that's how it's always been. That's how we saw our parents did it, because the husband is the Baal Habayis. He's the head and he's the king and the wife is the queen. It's very important that the wife shows the husband she appreciates him for what he is and for what he does, even if he's not the one bringing home the bread. I personally know of a very wise young lady whose husband learns in Kotel, and she works very hard to support them both. Now, he does a test every month of her hair on the Gemara and the Halacha that he's learnt, a written test. And he brings them home. She takes his test when he's got a good mark and she sticks them on the fridge. She is showing how she looks up to him and she appreciates and values what he's doing, what he's sitting and learning Torah. And even though she's the one who's bringing home the parnasa, she shows pride to him, and it's just between them, it's in the kitchen, in valuing his limud Torah and appreciating and demonstrating that he's not doing it just for himself, he's doing it for both as a single unit, as vayir basa echad. That's very important, that a woman shows appreciation for what her husband is and looks to him, so to speak, for leadership of the house. But it means other things as well. When a husband comes home and the wife is on the phone, so you put down the phone. You say, really sorry, my husband's just walked in and put down the phone. And no one can complain about that because that is showing respect for a husband. Yosim Midai. Now, if you're on the phone to an older single friend, then perhaps be a little bit more tactful and first wave to your husband and show that you're going to finish in a minute or two, and then gently bring around the conversation so you have to go now because your husband's come home, and bless her and give her a bracha that you can't wait for the day when she'll have to put down the phone to you because her husband has just walked in. But in principle, the husband comes before anybody else. And vice versa. If the husband is on the phone when his wife comes home, he says, sorry, must go, my wife has just walked in. Now there's a Gemara in Yevamos Daf Samach Gimel. The Gemara says, what is an example of a bad wife? Yeah, the Gemara asks the question, what is a bad wife? So the Gemara says, Rava says a bad wife is someone who lays the table for him, sets the table, puts out the food, and then turns her back on him, walks out. That, the Gemara says, is a bad wife. What is a good wife? A good wife is she doesn't just prepare the food and lay the table, but she sits down with her husband to eat. Now, even if she's eaten earlier because he came home late and she had to eat earlier, she still sits down next to him when he's eating. That is respecting her husband. And that means to say that you don't look at your WhatsApp during the meal when you're sitting there just you and your husband. That is disrespectful. In fact, you shouldn't answer the phone at all. Neither the husband nor the wife. When the husband and wife are sitting having a meal together, put the phone in the other room. There was a story once with someone was invited to a garden party at Buckingham Palace, and wandering around amongst the many guests, he found himself actually meeting the Queen, Elizabeth, the late Queen. And he ended up having a short chat with her. And as he was talking to her, suddenly his mobile phone started ringing in his pocket. So there was an awkward silence. And then the Queen said to him, Well, you'd better answer. It might be someone important. But there's no one more important than your husband. No one in the world is more important than your husband. And therefore, when you're having supper with your husband, pull the phone out of the room. Don't answer the phone. Whoever it is can wait. Whoever it is, they can wait. There's never going to be an emergency, unless you're absolutely waiting for some very urgent news or something like that. The woman's mechaber the husband, and at the same time, the husband is mechaber the wife. Basic respect means taking an interest in what the other person is doing, taking an interest in what they're saying, and when you're together and when you're interacting with each other, no one else comes in, no one else is more important.
Well, that's very interesting. And I was going to actually interrupt you with the modern day phenomena which you did address of the Kollel Yingolite and their wives who are working to support them. So many discuss this, and it's one of the contemporary issues that people bring to the fore of the role reversal and the men doing the women's job and the women doing the men's job. So effectively what you're saying is there's no inherent issue of the wife being the breadwinner, of the husband being in Kollel, and even though it's not something necessarily that was practiced throughout history, as long as the wife 100% knows and acts in the home that he is still somewhat the leader of the house, and that the breadwinning isn't tied to being the boss of the or the leader of the house. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, it's correct. And there is an element of mixing roles. Chazal say that in Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim made clothes for work with Avoda's Porach, which Chazal say means they gave the men the women's job and the women the men's job. So that is not the natural order of things. But when it comes to a Kollel life, first of all, one hopes that one has the Siyata Dishmaya, the Etzem Limud Torah and the Mesiras Nefesh involved in the Limud Torah will certainly mitigate any of those issues. But also, as I said, it's vital that at the same time, the household still remains that the husband is the king and the wife is the queen. And the wife has to feel appreciation for the fact that her husband's sitting and learning and show that to him. And if that is the situation, then you can still have an absolutely wonderful and blissful marriage, because the ikar is as we said, the man needs to feel respected, the wife needs to feel loved.
That could be a lot more difficult if a wife advances in a career, and let's say she has a team of employees under her, and she's gotten used to being in a leadership role all day long, and then she has to come home, and her husband comes home from Kollel, and she has to give him that respect when she's spent most of her day ordering people about.
That's correct. But as I say, she will feel much more fulfilled in the marriage if she does that.
Okay, so clearly respect is an inherent part of a relationship working. And you've explained very clearly how he needs to respect her. You've also explained how she needs to respect him. But then how does that work if they're both constantly in giving respect mode? In a practical level, it'd probably get a bit challenging of each one trying to show the other respect. They'll never walk into a door after you and after you.
Well, yes. And indeed, when it comes to opening the car door for your wife, for example, it's a very English way of doing things. It's accepted, chivalrous.
It usually dies after dating, though.
Yeah, so the Duke of Edinburgh, the husband of the late Queen Elizabeth, once said that if a man opens a car door for his wife, it's either a new car or a new wife. Again, if you think about how we've defined respect in the different roles, you'll see there's a clear difference. The respect that the woman has to have for the husband is that she defers to him as the head of the family, the leader of the family. But the respect that the husband has for a wife is different. He's got to provide for her, and provide for her more than he provides for himself, and ensure that she's taken care of before himself as well. Therefore, they are slightly different roles. But at the same time, yes, they both need to respect each other by showing appreciation for what each one does for the other. That is a respect which is actually common, and that can work both ways at the same time, simultaneously.
Right, so by appreciating that the way of giving respect is different is the way to have the best mutual respect.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said before that a woman needs to respect and look up to her husband. This is something I touched on last week with Rebbe Zimmerman, but seeing that we've gone deeper into this point, what happens if she simply can't respect him? She simply finds nothing to respect. Again, there's certain motions one can go through to show respect. What if there's an inherent issue that she simply doesn't respect him? Is there anything she could do about it?
So first of all, what will happen is if a woman can't respect her husband, and she won't be able to love him. And she won't be happy, because fulfillment in a marriage is to have a husband that she can respect and can look up to. And therefore, to try and fix a situation in which she doesn't respect her husband, And of course, we're not talking again about a situation where there's abuse. Abusive husband is a different story. There may be no solution. But the vast majority of husbands are not like that. So first of all, obviously, it's the prime responsibility for this is on the husband. He's got to make sure that he acts in a way that she respects him. He's got to get up in the morning and go and daven and learn and have chavrusas and go to work or go to Hool or do something with his life. Someone who sleeps in till I don't know what time and does nothing with his life, then his wife is going to find it very difficult to respect him. So you can't expect your wife to respect you if you're not providing anything for her to respect. So that's his primary responsibility, is really for the husband. He's got to make sure that he carries out his tafkid as he eat, as chavrusas, he assured he goes to dafen, and as a husband, by respecting his wife and by taking an interest in all the things that we've said. And if he does that, then she'll have something to respect. If he's not there yet, and she needs to find something about him that she can respect. Because if you want to love him, you need to be proud of him. So, first of all, concentrate on and look for the things that he does do that you can find respectful. After all, you married him at the beginning. So, does he provide for you? That's already something to respect. He goes out every day and he works and he manages to provide for you. What happens if he doesn't provide enough, but he tries? He goes out to work. So ultimately, Panos is in the hands of the Rebbeinu Shalom, but he makes the effort. He goes out there and he does his best. So be proud of that. So what if he doesn't do it? That's beyond his. It's beyond him. It's up to the Rebbeinu Shalom to decide. But he's got to make the effort. He does make the effort. Be proud of that. Does he learn Torah? Has he got chavrusas? Does he make a siyum? Do you make a big deal of it every time he finishes a perek in the Gemara? Make a siyum. Ask him to tell you when he's going to finish a masechta or whatever it is. Make something special for the kids. That everyone should, the household should see that the father is achieving something in his learning. He's achieving something, and he's covering ground. He's making a siyum. That's a wonderful chinuch for the children as well. But it gives a respect for the husband as well. Is he involved in the klal? Is he involved in Hatzalah or in Shemrim or in Chaverim or in some other aspect of tzedakah for the tzibur? Is he good with the kids at least? Does he help out with the kids? Respect him and be grateful for that. Does he make you laugh at least? A friend of mine asked his wife recently, he said to her, "Why did you marry me?" And she said, "Because you're funny. You make me laugh." And he said, "Oh, I thought it was because I was handsome and charming." And she said, "You see what I mean? You're hysterical." But the point is, again, does he at least that? Does he provide companionship for you? Does he want to provide for you? Respected for that. And again, if he feels respected, he will reciprocate. So she's going to try and find something to respect. Then he will feel respected. Once he feels respected, he will want to do things for her. And once he wants to do things for her, he'll start doing things for her. She will feel loved. She will respect him more. And it's a never-ending circle. So she's got to find something to respect in him and show him that respect. And then things will go from there, will only improve. He'll feel respected. He'll feel fulfilled as a husband. Once he feels he's respected as a husband, he'll want to provide for his wife because that's what a husband really wants to do. He wants to make his wife happy. She'll feel happy. She'll have more reason to respect him, and so on.
And how about the opposite? How about a husband who doesn't respect his wife?
Again, he's going to have to look for things which there are to respect, and there's always something. Of course, again, she provides food for him, she keeps house, she cleans, she washes, she brings up the kids. There's a huge amount to be grateful for, even if it's nothing else. And he's got to show that respect in the ways that we've said. That respect will lead to ahava, will lead to love. Then she will show him respect, and he will feel respected. Again, he'll have more reason to respect her. So it's also cyclical.
Right. So I just want to rewind back to something we said right at the beginning, that a woman can change her husband, and in fact, husbands will find a very hard time changing his wife. So how does that work? How would a woman change her husband?
Like we said before, you can't change a midah. You can't change a person's nature, and you can't change a person's middas, his characteristics. The person himself can spend a lifetime working on a midah, but you can't change someone else's midah. But you can change an attitude, and a wife can change her husband's behavior. But how do you do that? The wrong way to do it is to tell him what to do. To instruct him, I want you to do this, or go and do that, or go and do the other. And that won't work, because that is inherently disrespectful. He's the leader. He needs to feel that he makes the decisions for himself. Is his ego really that fragile? Yes, it is. He's a man. So if you're telling him what to do the whole time, you're getting it wrong. He doesn't want to be told what to do. A husband doesn't want to be told what to do. Don't try to be controlling. If he asks for your advice, give of it freely. If he doesn't ask, he doesn't want unsolicited advice. So let's give an example. You're driving to a chasna together. She's wearing the black dress in the end anyway. And the wife turns around to the husband and says, go this way or go that way. He doesn't want to be told which way to go because he is the husband and he is driving the car. He doesn't even want a suggestion or I would have gone a different way when you get stuck in traffic. Thank you very much. He doesn't want to hear your suggestions or your advice unless he asks for it. And whatever you do, don't ask him to stop and ask somebody for directions because he's not going to do that. This is his car, his journey, he's in charge, and he's going to get there if it's the last thing that he does.
It's like asking for a divorce.
Yeah. So don't tell him what to do and don't instruct him what to do and don't order him what to do because he reacts against that, automatically reacts against that. And don't ask rhetorical questions. So any question which starts with, why didn't you, don't say it. Why didn't you pick up the eggs on the way home? What is the answer to that? It's either there are no eggs or I forgot or whatever it is, but you don't want to hear the answer, so don't ask the question. It just puts you in an awkward position. He doesn't want to be told what to do. That's what he is. So how do you do it? What do you do it? And you reframe it. A husband wants to do what his wife wants. He wants his wife to be happy and he wants to do whatever she needs to be happy. And therefore, rather than tell him, I want you to do this or do that, you say, it would make me very happy if you do this. This is what I would like. I would be so proud if you did this. I would be so happy if you went to a shir every evening. Don't say to him, why aren't you going to a shir? Or go to a shir. Go out the house and do something. I'd rather say, it would make me happy if you go to a shir in the evening. I was so impressed with you. You got up early in the morning, you went to shul, you went to charusa b'shul shul. If you rephrase and reframe it, then that's already a completely different dynamic. Now, rather than instructing him and getting him on edge, you're telling him what makes you happy. And ultimately, every husband wants to make his wife happy. And the minute you start doing that, he will want to do it and he will want to provide for you because ultimately he wants to make you happy because that is his tough kid in a marriage. This point is so important and needs a whole discussion unto itself about a wife not trying to instruct or control her husband, but rather to show him what makes her happy. And there are countless examples of this that will come up in everyday life.
But if his ego is fragile, won't he retort with, well, it would make me happy if you do this and this?
He might do. Certain types of husband might respond like that. Don't give up. It won't work from one question or one advice or one suggestion or one day to the next. But if you can't constantly phrase your desires as your own desires and what you would be happy with rather than instructions to him, then it will break down his resistance and it'll be what he wants to do. And if you do the opposite, that's how you can end up causing tension. And I'll give you an example from the Torah. Korach, we know, rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu, against the Kodesh Baruch Hu. How did it start? So the Medrash tells us that the very first time that the Leviim were consecrated to Mishkan, the Torah says they had to shave off all their hair, their moustache, their beard, everything. Korach was a Levi. He came home completely bald, completely shaven, and his wife said to him, what has Moshe done to you? She says, he's appointed himself as the king, he's appointed his brother as a Kohen Gadol, he's appointed his nephews as Sgan Kohen Gadol, and if there's any truma, it goes to the Kohen, so it goes to Aaron, and if there's any Maisa, which does go to you, you've got to give Trumas Maisa 10% of that back to the Kohen as well. And look what he's done to you, he's cut off all your hair, and you're completely bald, and he's making fun of you. So Korach says, well, Moshe was a Levi, so he also did. She says, well, he's just doing that because Thomas Nafshim plished him. He's going to try and convince you to do it, so he's done it himself, but he's having a laugh. He's making a joke out of you. So Korach, what did he do? He ended up rebelling against Moshe Rabbeinu. The next thing she says, well, I'll show him what Tcheles is. I'll make a Talis Kula Tcheles, and so on. And that's what led to the Makah. So it says the part that says, Chazal, Chochmos Noshim Bonsa Beisa Vivelis Biodeho Teoseno. Ben Peles' wife saved him through her wisdom, but Korach's wife destroyed the household. How did she do it? Now, think about it. How did she do it? she disrespected him. She dissed him in the common parlance. She made fun of him. She said, I can't respect you. Look at you. Look what he's done to you. You've fallen for it. You made a fool of yourself. And he felt in his own eyes that he's messed up. He's lost all respect for his wife. So the only way he could get back that respect is to go and do what she's telling him to do. So you see that this is what Chazal tell us, that a kol min ha'isha, a woman has the power to change the behavior of her husband. But the way to do it is not to instruct him what to do, not to disrespect him. And sometimes instruction itself can be disrespecting. But rather, frame it as what would make you happy. What would you like? What would you want? And then all of a sudden the husband doesn't feel that he's been instructed what to do. He doesn't feel he's been told what to do. He still feels that he is the leader, at least at home, in his own home. He is the king. And then as a king, as a benevolent king, he will want to provide for his wife. He will now know what it is that she wants because she's told him, not instructed him. He will want to give her what she wants. He'll want to do what she wants. That itself will increase avo from his part. She will feel appreciated. She will feel loved. She will learn to respect him. And there will be a never-ending cycle of avo and kavod and coming together to form the basa echad, which is the purpose of the ideal marriage.
Well, Dayan Hool, we've covered a lot of ground. Can we just end off by saying, is there anything else one can do for a successful and happy marriage? Any final tidbits?
Yeah, so we have talked about a lot, and there's a lot to think about here. And the truth is, it's all just Rashi Perukim. It's just the headlines. Every one of the points that we made needs to be thought about and needs to be put into practice in all those different types of circumstances and situations. But what's important to remember is that it's never ending. It's a work. It's a lifetime's work. You never actually necessarily get there. When Avraham Avinu was 99 years old, Malachim came to visit him. And they said to him, Aye Sarah Ishtech, where is Sarah, your wife? And he said, Hinei ba'ohel, she's in the tent. It says Rashi B'Shem Chazal. They said that because they knew what Avraham was going to answer, and Avraham, by answering she was in the tent, would be reflecting on the fact that his wife is tzonua, she had sneers, kedei lechavavo al ba'alo, that they make her more beloved to her husband. Now, Avraham was 99 and Sarah was 89. I don't know when they got married. They've been married for many, many decades. And we're talking about Avraham and Sarah. But nonetheless, the Malachim said, we can be mechavav al ba'ala, we can still add a bit of extra love between Avraham and Sarah, and it's worthwhile doing. So it's a never-ending avoda. However you've worked on it, you have to keep going. And the good news is, because it's a never-ending avoda, it can start today as well. And if you're thinking, my spouse really needs to hear this podcast, you may well be right, but you're somewhat missing the point. You have the Chazal tell you the tools about the way to create and build a happy marriage. And if you concentrate on it, and both parties concentrate on what their obligations are, each person has to concentrate on what you need to do, not on what the other person needs to do. Don't keep telling them what they need to do, but rather concentrate on what you need to do. It will automatically be reciprocated. And one final point, which the Chazon Ish says the Chazon Ish, you need to fill as well. B'chol drocheho da'ehu, says the Chazon Ish goes on this as well. You want a successful and happy marriage, you've got to do everything Chazal tell you to do. But don't forget to daven as well. Daven for a happy and successful marriage, for Ava v'achvan shalom v'reis, and the Rebbeinu Shalom, if you do what Chazal say, will answer your tefillahs as well.
Well, that's a lot of food for thought. As you suggested, makes for repeated listening, and very much appreciate all the wisdom and insights that you've shared. I think there's a lot for both men and women to take out of this podcast. Thank you very much for coming in. Please do send any questions to podcasts@federation.org.uk, or if you wish to submit anonymously, go to the online form on the Federation website. Please feel free to share and to give us a 5-star review. It does help people find it and enjoy them too. Thank you very much, Dayan Hool.
Thank you.